Amid the lively chatter and vibrant colors of a bustling market, a neglected golden retriever, thin and frail, lies chained near a cluttered meat stall. His sad, longing eyes catch the attention of a 7-year-old girl named Lila. The dog's tattered coat and timid demeanor stir something deep within her. Lila tugs at her mother's hand, her voice trembling with emotion, pleading to help the lonely dog. What unfolds next is a story of courage, love, and an extraordinary bond that changes everything. The Charleston market was a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds, buzzing with life under the late morning sun. Vendors called out their deals, families wandered through stalls piled high with fruits and vegetables, and the savory aroma of freshly grilled meats mingled with the salty sea breeze. Among the chaos, 7-year-old Lila walked beside her mother, Sarah, holding her hand as they weaved through the crowd. As they approached a meat stall at the market's far corner, Lila's steps slowed. Her bright green eyes landed on a figure that stood out against the bustling vibrancy. A golden retriever, thin and frail, chained to a post next to the stall. His once golden fur was matted and dulled by dirt, and his ribs showed through his gaunt frame. His eyes, deep and sad, seemed to plead for kindness. "Mummy, look!" Lila tugged at Sarah's sleeve, her voice a mix of shock and sorrow. Sarah followed her daughter's gaze and frowned. The sight of the dog tugged at her heartstrings, but she knew the situation was complicated. "Oh, sweetheart, he doesn't look well," Sarah said gently. "But I don't think he's ours to help." Lila's lip trembled as she turned to her mother. "He looks so lonely, Mum. Can't we do something?" Before Sarah could respond, a deep, gruff voice interrupted. "If you're not buying, move along." It was the stall's owner, Joe Carter, a burly man in a stained apron. His thick arms rested on his chopping block, and his eyes were sharp and unyielding. Lila hesitated, but gathered her courage. "Sir, is that your dog?" she asked, her small voice trembling. Carter looked at her as if she had asked something ridiculous. "That mutt? Yeah, he's mine. Why?" Lila glanced at the dog again, who now avoided her gaze, curling into himself as if to disappear. "He looks really sad. Can I pet him?" Carter let out a harsh laugh. "You don't want to pet him, kid. He's not a pet. He's just here to scare off people who shouldn't be near my stall." "But he looks hungry," Lila said, her voice insistent, despite the lump in her throat. "He's fine," Carter said dismissively. "Now go on. I've got customers to deal with." Sarah gently placed a hand on Lila's shoulder, steering her away from the stall. "Come on, honey. Let's not bother him." "But, Mum," Lila's voice cracked, and her steps lagged as she glanced back at the dog. "We can help him, can't we?" Sarah sighed. "Lila, I know you care, but we already have Max to take care of." She was referring to their 5-year-old Labrador, who was a bundle of energy and responsibility on his own. "It wouldn't be fair to Max, or to this dog, if we took him in and couldn't give them both the care they need." Lila looked down, defeated but not convinced. As they continued their shopping, her thoughts remained on the dog. She decided she wouldn't give up so easily. The following week, Lila begged her parents to let her return to the market. "I just want to see if he's okay," she pleaded. Michael, her father, raised an eyebrow as he glanced up from the newspaper. "Lila, we've talked about this. We don't have room for another dog." "But Dad, he's all alone," Lila exclaimed, her voice rising with urgency. "He's not our responsibility," Michael replied, his tone firm. "Besides, we don't know where he's been or what kind of care he needs. It's a big commitment." Sarah, who had been listening quietly, stepped in. "I'll take her to the market," she said, "just to check. No promises." Michael sighed but nodded. "Fine, but don't let her get her hopes up." When Sarah and Lila returned to the market, Lila rushed to the corner stall, hoping for a miracle. The dog was still there, curled up in the same spot, his chain shorter than she remembered. He didn't even lift his head this time. "Buddy," Lila whispered, the name she had secretly given him in her mind. She crouched a few feet away, her small frame making her less intimidating. "Hi, boy," she said softly, extending her hand. The dog's ears twitched at her voice, and he sniffed the air cautiously. Slowly his head lifted, and their eyes met. Lila's heart ached at the tiredness in his gaze. From behind the counter, Carter noticed the interaction. "What did I tell you last week?" he snapped. "Don't bother the dog." "Please, Mr. Carter," Lila said, standing up with newfound bravery. "Can't someone else take care of him? He looks really sick." Carter grunted. "He's fine where he is. I don't have time to deal with a dog that can't earn his keep." Sarah stepped in. "Joe, if he's more trouble than he's worth, why not let someone else give him a home?" Carter narrowed his eyes. "He's my dog. I don't owe anyone an explanation." Defeated once more, Sarah and Lila walked away, but not before Lila slipped a piece of bread she had saved into the dog's reach. Buddy devoured it quickly, his tail giving the faintest wag. Over the next several days, Lila couldn't stop thinking about Buddy. Every night she would lie awake, imagining him alone in the market, cold and hungry. She knew her parents had valid reasons for not bringing him home, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Buddy needed her. That Friday, as Sarah tucked her into bed, Lila looked up with teary eyes. "Mum, he's not going to make it if we leave him there." Sarah's heart broke for her daughter. "Sweetheart, sometimes we can't save everyone, even if we want to, but I'll talk to your father, okay?" It wasn't the answer Lila wanted, but it was enough to give her hope. The Charleston market was alive with its usual cacophony of voices and scents, but Lila's mind was focused on only one thing: Buddy. It had been 3 weeks since she first saw the neglected golden retriever chained near the meat stall, and every Saturday since she had begged her mother, Sarah, to let her visit him. Though her parents had made it clear they couldn't take on another dog, Lila wasn't ready to give up. That morning, as Lila and Sarah approached the familiar corner, she spotted Buddy lying in his usual spot. His ribs were still visible, his fur still dull and matted, but his tail gave the faintest wag when he saw her. Lila's heart leapt. "He remembers me, Mum," she exclaimed, kneeling down to greet him. She reached into the small bag she carried and pulled out a piece of cooked chicken she had saved from dinner the night before. "Hi, Buddy," she whispered, placing the treat gently on the ground. The dog sniffed the air before inching forward, his movements slow and cautious, and took the food from her hand. His tail wagged a little more. Behind the counter, Joe Carter watched the interaction, his thick arms resting on his greasy apron. His expression was as gruff as ever. "You're back again, huh?" he said, his voice grating. "She just wants to say hi," Sarah said, stepping in to defend her daughter. "It's clear he likes her." Carter grunted. "The mutt likes anyone who feeds him. Don't get any ideas, lady. He's not going anywhere." Lila stood up, her small frame trembling with frustration. "Why don't you let us take him?" she asked. "You don't even like him." Carter's eyebrows shot up. "He's my dog, kid. What I do with him is my business." "Then why don't you take better care of him?" Lila shot back, surprising even herself with her boldness. Carter's eyes narrowed, but instead of snapping at her, he waved a dismissive hand. "Go on now, you're in the way." For the next hour, Lila and Sarah wandered through the market, picking up fresh produce and bread. But Lila's mind was elsewhere, and every few minutes she asked if they could go back to check on Buddy. "Just one more time, Mum," she pleaded as they finished shopping. Sarah sighed but nodded. "All right, but we won't stay long." When they returned to the stall, the scene was different. Carter was leaning against the counter, a half-empty bottle of whiskey in his hand. His face was flushed, and his speech was slurred as he barked orders at a younger vendor helping him behind the stall. Lila hesitated, glancing up at her mother. "Mum, is he okay?" Sarah frowned. "Stay close to me," she said, guiding Lila toward the stall cautiously. Carter noticed them approaching and straightened up unsteadily. "You again," he said, his words thick. "What do you want now?" "We just wanted to check on the dog," Sarah said, her tone measured. "The mutt?" Carter laughed, a rough, humorless sound. You want him? Fine. Take him. He's no good to me. Lila froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. Really? She whispered. Carter waved a hand, his movements erratic. Yeah, he's useless. Always was. Just a waste of food. Sarah stepped forward cautiously. Mr. Carter, are you sure about this? You might want to think it over. There's nothing to think about, Carter snapped. If you want him, he's yours. Just get him out of my sight. Lila didn't wait for another word. She dropped to her knees beside Buddy, her hands trembling as she unlatched his chain. You're free now, Buddy, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The dog looked at her, his eyes wide with uncertainty, but when she gently patted his head, his tail wagged weakly. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Lila, let's take him home. We'll figure everything else out later. As they led Buddy away from the stall, Carter called after them, his voice tinged with mockery. Good luck with that mutt, you'll need it. The ride home was quiet, with Lila sitting in the back seat, her hand resting on Buddy's head. The dog lay beside her, his body trembling slightly as he adjusted to the unfamiliar surroundings. You're safe now, Lila whispered. We're going to take care of you. When they pulled into the driveway, Michael was waiting on the porch, his arms crossed. His expression shifted to one of surprise when he saw the dog step out of the car. What's this? He asked. Sarah sighed as she stepped out of the driver's seat. Carter gave him to us. He was drunk and said the dog wasn't worth keeping. Michael raised an eyebrow. And you thought bringing him home was a good idea? Lila stepped forward, her voice pleading. Dad, he needs us. He's so thin and he's been treated so badly. Please, just let him stay. Michael glanced at the dog, who looked up at him with timid eyes. After a long pause, he let out a heavy sigh. We'll see. But Lila, this is your responsibility. If we're doing this, you're helping with everything. Feeding, walking, cleaning up, understood? Lila nodded eagerly. I promise, Dad. I'll take care of him. As they led Buddy into the house, Max, their boisterous Labrador, bounded over to greet the new arrival. Buddy flinched at first, but Max sniffed him curiously before wagging his tail in approval. Lila watched the interaction with relief. See, Dad, Max likes him already. Michael chuckled softly. We'll see how long that lasts. For the first time in weeks, Buddy curled up on a soft bed, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Lila sat beside him, gently stroking his head. Welcome home, Buddy, she whispered. The dog let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes, as though he finally believed he was safe. The moment Buddy stepped into the house, he froze. His thin frame trembled as he cautiously sniffed the air, his ears twitching at every unfamiliar sound. Lila knelt beside him, speaking in a soft, soothing voice. It's okay, Buddy. You're safe now. But safety was not a feeling Buddy knew. Every sudden movement made him flinch, and the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen sent him scurrying under the table. He tucked himself into a tight ball, his ribs rising and falling quickly as he panted in fear. Lila's heart broke at the sight. Mum, why is he so scared? She asked, as Sarah came into the room. Sarah crouched next to Lila, watching Buddy's trembling form. He's been through a lot, sweetheart. It's going to take time for him to feel at home. That first night, Buddy refused to leave his spot under the table. Lila brought him a bowl of water and a few small pieces of chicken, which he cautiously accepted. She sat cross-legged nearby, careful not to make any sudden moves. I'll stay right here, she whispered. You don't have to be scared anymore. For hours, she talked to him in a gentle voice, telling him about her day and her dreams of playing with him in the yard. Gradually, Buddy's breathing slowed, and his eyes grew heavy. Though he didn't venture out, Lila knew she had taken the first step toward earning his trust. The following morning, Max bounded into the living room, tail wagging as usual. Buddy, startled by the energetic Labrador, growled softly and backed further under the table. Lila immediately stepped in, stroking Max's head to calm him down. "It's okay, Max," she said. "Buddy's just nervous." Michael watched from the doorway, his arms crossed. "This is going to be harder than you thought, Lila. Are you sure you can handle it?" Lila nodded with determination. "He just needs time, Dad. I know he'll come around." Michael sighed, but smiled faintly. "All right, but remember, you promised to help with everything." Lila spent the rest of the day by Buddy's side, coaxing him out little by little. She brought his food closer to the edge of the table, speaking softly as he inched forward to eat. She held out her hand, palm up, allowing him to sniff before gently patting his head. Each small victory felt like a monumental achievement. By the end of the week, Buddy had started venturing out from under the table. He would cautiously follow Lila to the living room, his movements slow and hesitant. Loud noises still made him flinch, and he avoided Michael's large frame, but his trust in Lila was growing. One evening, as Lila sat on the floor reading, Buddy surprised her by curling up beside her. She froze for a moment, afraid to scare him off, but when she slowly reached out to stroke his fur, he leaned into her touch. "Mom!" Lila called softly, her voice filled with excitement. "Look! He's letting me pet him!" Sarah peeked in from the kitchen, smiling warmly. "You're doing a wonderful job, Lila. Keep being patient with him." From that day on, Buddy began to follow Lila everywhere. He shadowed her as she did her homework, sat beside her during meals, and even waited outside her room at night. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Still, Buddy had a long way to go. He shied away from strangers, barking nervously whenever someone new entered the house. When the doorbell rang, he would dart to the corner, trembling. Even Max's playful attempts to engage him were met with cautious growls. Lila never got frustrated. She understood that Buddy's fears weren't his fault, and that trust couldn't be rushed. Every afternoon, she sat with him in the backyard, letting him explore at his own pace. She brought a tennis ball, rolling it gently across the grass. "Look, Buddy," she said encouragingly, "it's okay. You can play if you want." At first, Buddy only watched, his head tilted slightly. But one day, he surprised her. Tentatively, he nudged the ball with his nose, sending it rolling back toward her. Lila clapped her hands in delight. "Good boy, Buddy, you did it." From then on, Buddy started to play more. He still hesitated when Max got too boisterous, but he began wagging his tail more often and even barked softly when Lila encouraged him. One quiet afternoon, Lila sat in the yard with a book in her lap. Buddy lay beside her, his head resting on her leg. As she absent-mindedly stroked his fur, she realized just how far they had come in such a short time. "You're getting braver every day," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Buddy looked up at her, his eyes no longer filled with fear but with something new, trust. In that moment, Lila knew they were going to be okay. The sun shone brightly over the backyard, where the smell of sizzling burgers and grilled vegetables filled the air. It was a perfect day for a barbecue, and the family had invited a few neighbors to join. Lila was busy helping her mother set the picnic table, her excitement bubbling over. Her 3-year-old brother, Tommy, toddled around the yard, clutching his favorite toy truck. Max, the family's energetic Labrador, darted around, wagging his tail as he chased a ball. Buddy, still cautious around large gatherings, lay in the shade of the porch. His eyes followed Lila as she moved about, a sign of the bond they had built. He hadn't ventured far from her side since she had brought him home, but today, the commotion in the yard seemed to keep him on edge. Loud laughter and clinking plates made his ears twitch nervously. "Don't worry, Buddy," Lila said, pausing to kneel beside him. She gave him a reassuring pat. "You're safe here." Buddy's tail wagged faintly, his trust in Lila evident, but his eyes darted toward Tommy, who had wandered toward the edge of the yard near the pool. The toddler was absorbed in pushing his toy truck along the pavement, unaware of how close he was to the water. The adults were deep in conversation when it happened. Tommy tripped over a loose paving stone, his small frame toppling forward. The toy truck slipped from his hand and skidded into the pool. Reaching for it, Tommy lost his balance and fell into the water with a loud splash. Time seemed to slow as the sound drew everyone's attention. Sarah screamed, dropping the plate she was holding. Michael jumped to his feet, but he was too far away to reach Tommy in time. Before anyone could move, Buddy sprang into action. His instincts kicked in, and he bolted from the porch with surprising speed. Bounding across the yard, he reached the pool in seconds. Without hesitation, he jumped into the water, creating a splash that rippled outward. Tommy's small arms flailed as he struggled to keep his head above water. Buddy swam to him, his strong legs cutting through the water with purpose. He gently clamped his mouth around the back of Tommy's shirt, careful not to hurt him, and began paddling toward the edge. Lila stood frozen, her hands clasped over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Come on, Buddy," she whispered, her voice trembling with hope. With a final push, Buddy reached the pool's edge, where Michael leaned down and pulled Tommy out. The little boy coughed and sputtered, his eyes wide with shock, but otherwise unharmed. Sarah scooped him into her arms, holding him tightly as relief washed over her. Buddy climbed out of the pool, his drenched fur dripping onto the pavement. He shook himself off before sitting down, panting heavily. His eyes darted to Tommy, as if to make sure he was okay. Lila rushed to Buddy's side, wrapping her arms around his wet neck. "You did it, Buddy! You saved him!" she cried, her voice full of pride and love. The yard was silent for a moment, everyone processing what had just happened. Then one of the neighbors started clapping. The applause quickly spread, and soon everyone was cheering for Buddy. "You've got yourself a hero," the neighbor said to Michael, who nodded, his eyes glistening with emotion. That evening, as the family sat together in the living room, Lila couldn't stop talking about Buddy's bravery. "He didn't even think twice, Mum. He just knew Tommy needed help." Sarah stroked Buddy's head, her gratitude evident in her eyes. "You're an amazing dog, Buddy," she said softly. "We're so lucky to have you." Michael, who had been skeptical about bringing Buddy home, looked at the dog with newfound respect. "I wasn't sure about you at first," he admitted, "but today, you proved you belong here." Buddy lay curled up on the floor, his tail wagging lazily as he basked in the family's affection. For the first time since Lila had rescued him, he seemed completely at ease. The story of Buddy's heroic rescue spread quickly. A neighbor who had witnessed the event shared it with the local newspaper, and within days, a reporter arrived to interview the family. Lila beamed with pride as she recounted the story, emphasizing Buddy's courage and intelligence. The article, titled "Local Dog Saves Toddler from Pool," featured a photo of Buddy sitting proudly next to Lila and Tommy. The story praised Buddy as a hero and highlighted the bond he had formed with his new family. As more neighbors read the story, they began stopping by to meet Buddy. Some brought treats, while others simply wanted to pet the dog who had become a local legend. Buddy, though still shy around strangers, seemed to understand their intentions. He wagged his tail and allowed them to approach, his confidence growing with each interaction. One evening, as the family sat on the porch, Lila leaned against Buddy, her hand resting on his back. "You're famous now," she said with a giggle, "but you'll always be my Buddy first." Buddy nuzzled her hand, his eyes soft with affection. For him, the recognition didn't matter. All that mattered was the family who had given him a second chance and the girl who had never given up on him. Buddy's story had become the talk of the town. The newspaper article detailing his rescue of Tommy had turned him into a local celebrity. Neighbors stopped by to meet the heroic dog, bringing treats and praising his bravery. Buddy, though shy at first, grew more confident with every kind word and gentle pat. But not everyone was celebrating Buddy's new life. It was a sunny afternoon when the family first noticed Joe Carter's old pickup truck parked across the street. The man himself sat behind the wheel, watching the house. Lila, sitting on the porch with Buddy at her feet, felt a chill run down her spine. She hurried inside to tell her parents. "That's Carter's truck," Michael said, frowning. "What's he doing here?" Sarah peered through the window, her arms crossed. "I don't like this." Later that week, Carter made his move. He arrived at the house, his face set in a scowl, and knocked loudly on the door. When Michael answered, Carter wasted no time. "I want my dog back," he growled. Michael stared at him, stunned. "What are you talking about? You gave him to us." "I made a mistake," Carter said, his voice rising. "He's my dog. You had no right to take him." "You were the one who gave him up," Michael countered, his tone firm. "And we have no intention of handing him back." Carter's face darkened. "Then I'll see you in court." The family was shaken. Over dinner that night, Lila kept her hand on Buddy's head, as though afraid Carter would show up and take him away. "He can't take Buddy, can he?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No, he can't," Sarah said firmly, "but we need to be prepared." The next day, Michael contacted Miss Patterson, a lawyer known for her work in animal rights cases. When they met, the family explained everything: how Carter had neglected Buddy, his sudden decision to give him up, and his recent threats. Miss Patterson listened carefully before nodding. "Carter doesn't have much of a case if he willingly gave up the dog," she said. "But ownership disputes over pets can get messy. We'll need to gather evidence showing that Buddy is better off with you." "What kind of evidence?" Sarah asked. "Photos? Veterinary records? Witness statements? Anything that shows Buddy's condition when you took him in and how he's improved since," Miss Patterson explained. "And if there's any proof that Carter mistreated him, that would make things much easier." For the next week, the family worked tirelessly to gather evidence. Sarah sorted through her phone, finding photos of Buddy from his first day at the house, thin, matted and timid, compared to his current healthy and happy state. Michael reached out to neighbors who had witnessed Buddy's transformation, asking for their support. Lila, with Sarah's help, wrote a heartfelt letter describing her bond with Buddy and how he had changed since coming into their lives. Meanwhile, Miss Patterson began her own investigation into Joe Carter's history. What she found was damning. She called the family into her office the following week. "It seems Carter has a history of animal neglect," she said. "I found records of several complaints made against him over the years. Most were dismissed due to lack of evidence, but it establishes a pattern." Lila's eyes widened. "What kind of complaints?" "Neighbors reported seeing animals left in poor conditions," Miss Patterson explained. "Dogs chained outside without food or water, livestock left unattended for days. It's clear he doesn't take proper care of his animals." Michael leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "So, what do we do now?" "This information could be critical," Miss Patterson said. "If Carter decides to take this to court, we'll use his history to argue that Buddy is better off with your family." That evening, the family sat together in the living room, reviewing the evidence they had collected. Photos of Buddy's transformation, vet records showing his improved health, and testimonies from neighbors painted a clear picture of a dog who had been rescued from neglect and given a second chance. Lila placed her hand on Buddy's back as he lay beside her. "We're going to fight for you," she whispered. "I promise." Buddy looked up at her, his eyes soft with trust. For him, the memories of Carter's harsh treatment were fading, replaced by the warmth and love of his new family. But the fight wasn't over yet. The day of the court hearing arrived with an air of tension. The family had spent weeks preparing, gathering evidence and rehearsing their statements. Michael wore his best suit. Sarah looked poised yet determined, and Lila clutched a folder filled with photos and letters she had written about Buddy. Even Buddy seemed to sense the importance of the day, staying close to Lila's side as they prepared to leave. Miss Patterson met them at the courthouse. "You've done everything right," she reassured them. "Now it's up to the judge to see the truth." The courtroom was small but packed with onlookers. News of the case had spread and many in the community had come to support the family. Joe Carter sat at the opposite table, his expression stony. He wore a clean shirt for the occasion, but his demeanor was as surly as ever. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern yet fair presence, called the hearing to order. This case concerns the custody of a golden retriever, currently named Buddy, and allegations of neglect against Mr. Joe Carter. She began, her voice clear and authoritative. Let us proceed. Miss Patterson stood first, presenting the family's case. She began by showing photos of Buddy from his time at Carter's stall. The chain around his neck, his visible ribs, his matted fur, and his hollow eyes. This is the condition Buddy was in when the Johnson family first saw him, she said, her voice steady. It is evident that he was malnourished and neglected. Next, she showed photos of Buddy now, his coat shiny, his eyes bright, his body healthy and strong. This is Buddy today, after months of care and love in the Johnson household. The contrast is undeniable. The family also submitted veterinary records detailing Buddy's health improvements, along with written testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed his transformation. Lila's heartfelt letter was read aloud, drawing murmurs from the audience. Buddy isn't just a dog to me, the letter read. He's my best friend. He saved my little brother, and he saved me too. Carter's lawyer attempted to argue that Buddy had always been fed and cared for at the market, and that the family had taken him without proper consent. Carter himself testified, his voice gruff and defensive. I might not pamper my animals, but they're fine. That dog was mine, and they had no right to take him. Miss Patterson wasted no time in countering his claims. She introduced evidence of Carter's history of animal neglect, complaints from neighbors, past fines for mistreatment, and even photos of other animals he had kept in similar conditions. This is not a case of a single mistake, she argued. This is a pattern of neglect and disregard for the well-being of animals. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully. She asked pointed questions, her gaze sharp as she looked between Carter and the Johnson family. When all testimonies were heard, she called for a brief recess to deliberate. The courtroom was silent as the judge returned to deliver her verdict. She looked directly at Carter as she spoke. The evidence presented today leaves no doubt that Buddy was neglected while under your care, Mr. Carter. His condition when he was found speaks for itself, as does his transformation since being with the Johnson family. She turned her attention to the family, her expression softening. Buddy has found a loving and stable home where his needs are met and he is thriving. It is in his best interest to remain with the Johnson family. I hereby grant them permanent custody of Buddy. Carter opened his mouth to protest, but the judge raised a hand to silence him. Furthermore, given the evidence of repeated neglect, I am imposing a fine and issuing a lifetime ban on your ownership of animals, Mr. Carter. You have demonstrated that you are unfit to care for them. The relief in the courtroom was palpable. Lila let out a small cry of joy, wrapping her arms around Buddy's neck as tears streamed down her face. You're ours forever, she whispered. Neighbors and friends who had come to support them clapped quietly, their smiles filled with pride for the family's victory. Miss Patterson shook Michael's hand, her expression one of satisfaction. You fought for him, and you won. Buddy's lucky to have you. As they left the courthouse, reporters gathered outside, eager to document the case. Michael spoke briefly, emphasizing the importance of treating animals with kindness and respect. This isn't just about Buddy, he said. It's about standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. That evening, the family celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. Buddy lay beside Lila, his eyes half closed in contentment. The weight of his past seemed to have finally lifted, leaving only the love and safety of his new life. For Lila, this was more than just a legal victory. It was proof that love and determination could overcome even the darkest of beginnings. As she stroked Buddy's soft fur, she whispered, You're safe now, forever. Buddy let out a soft sigh, his tail wagging gently as if to say, I know. With the court ruling behind them, life settled into a peaceful rhythm for the Johnson family and for Buddy. The once neglected dog was now thriving in an environment filled with love, security, and joy. He no longer flinched at loud noises or hid from strangers. Instead, he had become a confident and cherished member of the family. A few weeks after the court case, the family decided to attend the annual Charleston Community Pet Fair. It was an event they had always enjoyed, but this year was special. It would be Buddy's first time joining them. Lila was overjoyed at the opportunity to showcase Buddy's transformation and introduce him to others. As they arrived, the fair was already buzzing with excitement. Booths lined the park, offering everything from pet toys to training demonstrations. Dogs of all shapes and sizes barked and wagged their tails as they mingled with their owners. Buddy walked proudly beside Lila, his tail wagging steadily as he took in the sights and sounds. The Johnsons stopped at a booth showcasing agility courses. Lila's eyes lit up as she watched a golden retriever gracefully navigate the jumps and tunnels. "Can we try, Mum?" she asked eagerly. Sarah smiled. "Why not? Let's see how Buddy does." The instructor guided them to the starting line. "Let's begin with some simple exercises," he said. "Agility isn't just about speed, it's about trust and communication between the dog and handler." Lila crouched down to Buddy's level. "Ready, Buddy?" she whispered, stroking his ears. Buddy's ears perked up and his tail wagged in response. When Lila gave the signal, he bolted forward, leaping over the small hurdles with surprising grace. He hesitated slightly at the tunnel, but, with Lila's encouragement, trotted through it confidently. By the time he crossed the finish line, the crowd was clapping. "You've got a natural talent there," the instructor said, impressed. "Have you ever thought about training him for competitions?" Lila laughed, hugging Buddy. "I think he's perfect just the way he is." As the day went on, many people stopped to ask about Buddy. Lila proudly told his story, sharing how he had gone from a neglected market dog to a beloved family member, and even a hero. Every time someone patted his head or praised his bravery, Buddy seemed to stand a little taller. Near the end of the fair, the event organizers announced a special recognition for community heroes. To Lila's delight, Buddy's name was called. She led him onto the small stage as the crowd erupted in applause. The organizers handed her a plaque engraved with the words, "Buddy, a true hero and beloved companion." Lila knelt beside Buddy, tears in her eyes. "You've come so far," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Buddy wagged his tail and nuzzled her hand, his way of saying he was proud of her too. That evening the family sat together in the backyard, reflecting on how much had changed since Buddy first entered their lives. Michael, who had been skeptical about taking in another dog, raised his glass. "To Buddy," he said, "the best decision we ever made." Sarah smiled warmly, holding Tommy close. "And to Lila, for never giving up on him." Lila beamed, her hand resting on Buddy's back. "He's not just a dog, he's family." Buddy let out a soft bark, as if to agree. The family laughed, the sound carrying into the warm night air. Has Buddy's journey truly reached its end, or is this just the start of a life overflowing with love, trust, and endless joy? His incredible transformation is a testament to the power of second chances and the miracles that come with faith and kindness. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories of hope and redemption. If this tale touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community for more inspiring stories like this. May God bless you and your loved ones, and we'll see you in the next video.